If we want to have enough seed to, say, restore a field, then we need a lot of seed. What we do here is we take seeds that have been wild collected and we propagate them to increase the seed availability for habitat restoration. Native seed production is farming. It really relies on the techniques that farmers use on a day-to-day basis. But most native species could be described as specialty crops. The same techniques you would use to grow oats or soybeans might not work very well here.
Farming native plants, it's important to try to retain all of the diversity that could be there. And that can be diversity in size, diversity in vigor, flower color.
We're putting them on so many different kinds of sites, and they're going to experience so many different environments. The way around that is to provide a lot of genetic diversity, because any one type might do poorly in all the other years or all the other conditions. There's sort of two levels of diversity. One is how many species we're growing, but there's also the genetic diversity that goes into each of these crops. For example, right behind me is Oregon iris. It is represented here not by just seeds from one place, but seeds from many different populations. And so we have created essentially a hyper-diverse population here by collecting seeds from multiple locations, all within the same kind of ecological zone. What results is a seed crop that is over-diverse compared to any single population out there. I love coming out here this time of year. I mean, this just makes for such a show. We could probably sell tickets to this. All of these crops here are first generation from the wild. They're the result of collecting seeds at remnant populations of these wild species. We don't like to go past 1 or 2 generations if we can help it. 3 is kind of the industry standard of stop for keeping the wild types present in the gene pool.
So the steps that go into native seed production are the initial collection.
We have to clean them and sort them. Typically, we start them in a greenhouse.
And it has to be sown into a field that has been prepared to have a very nice seed bed. The next step would be the year-long process of weeding the field and keeping it clean.
So they grow in an agricultural field, they flower in the spring and summer. In midsummer to fall, harvest begins.
Once it's harvested, you have to thresh the material and then clean all the seed and make sure that you've gotten all the weeds out.
Then the seeds are made available for sale or for restoration. So one of the biggest challenges to specialty crops is harvesting. There's no single technique for all of these species.
This is Kincaid's lupin. It's incredibly difficult to grow. You can see here on this flower, it's just starting to make little pods right here, and it hasn't even opened these buds. And if you wanted to harvest the seed all at once, which would be the most efficient way, it's not going to be ripe at the same time. We choose to harvest by hand, which is an incredible amount of energy, but because this plant is so rare, we will take the time.
Every plant that's out here is a dream. Every seed is a wish. We want those seeds to do well in restoration. So we need to have the most efficient method so we can get the most seeds off the crop.
This is Ranunculus occidentalis that we harvested, the western buttercup. We'll use the combine as the first step. It removes most of the plant material, so then it's easier for us to get in with the brooms and the vacuums. James is down at the other end of the field and he's sweeping the seed that's on the weed fabric towards me. And then I'm gonna fire up the generator and use our shop vacs and suck it up. That's why we vacuum, because it's just about as much seed vacuumed as combined. There are not a lot of machines that are made specifically for harvesting native seeds, so you have to adapt a lot of machinery that exists and build stuff that doesn't. And it's neat and weird, and I like that. Next, we'll actually dry them down in kiddie pools and make sure that all of the after ripening that's going to happen has happened and that they're nice and dry to the touch before we pack them up into grocery sacks, and we'll take them off to our seed cleaning facility, and we're left with just the seeds that we harvested and what we want to go back out into restoration sites. A lot of these plants that we're putting back into restoration sites, their habitat's been lost, and it's people that took that habitat away. It feels good to me to try to right that ship a little bit.
Well, there's an interesting spot for you. That is a roosting site for a young sage-grouse hen. This is part of the restoration component of this site. This is a blue bunch wheatgrass that we've collected locally and propagated. We planted the Sandberg bluegrass, the blue bunch wheatgrass, the Idaho fescue. I'm Jerry Benson. I represent Benson Farms Incorporated. We are a seed production and restoration company. We produce everything from wildflowers, native grasses, sagebrush, even corn and vegetable seeds, probably in the neighborhood of 100 species. Bring me 4 ounces of seed, and we will make 5,000 plugs out of it. We'll plant those tubelings out into an initial propagation block, harvest the seed off of that. Generally, we go from 4 ounces to 3 or 4 pounds. And then the 3 or 4 pounds, we can plant 2 acres, and we can bump it up to 1,000 to 2,000 pounds. We sell quite a bit to government agencies, tribal interests, NGOs, conservation groups.
My father's Jerry Benson. I grew up on the farm. We have been farming for a long time, but we started farming native seed in 1995. Most of our material is source identified, so it's collected right from the location that it usually wants to go back to or very nearby. We tend to have the 2-year cycle. So we will grow this grass for 2 years, and then we'll have 2 or 3 years of rotation, and then back to another grass cycle.
That's the first step, is to decide that the crop is in harvestable position. Then the next step is to come in with like the swather here and put it in the windrows and then let it cure for 7-8 days under the sun so that it gets good and dry.
See how green and soft that is? It just bends. The seed head will come apart easier once it's thrashed as some moisture evaporates out. The stem moisture has to come down too, because you have to be able to also break down the stem that's attached to. And it's getting there, but we're not there all the way yet.
Combine picks this up, runs it through the apparatuses inside, and then it goes into the tank, and then you haul it to the seed plant. It's kind of a very delicate tightrope you walk trying to get this thing at the right moment.
We also grow shrubs. Here's some sagebrush. We just planted this one last fall, and they look so happy. We grow a lot of 10 CI, 3 CI, and 4 CI tubes. This would be a 10 cubic inch tube, which is what people usually want for planting out in restoration projects. So come fall, once they are already root tight and they have a really nice root, we'll take them out of the plugs, put them in a box, and then either we ship them off, or if the customer comes, they can pick them up. That's the Oregon Sunshine. So this one here looks like it's starting to lose its petals. So this is a sign that it's gonna start becoming ready to harvest or seed. Yeah, it's already getting its color. We keep our forbs separate from our grasses. Most of it is for weed control. We want to try to keep our fields as weed clean as possible so that we don't have any contaminants. Any advice that I would give to anybody else growing forbs, you have to be patient. Sometimes you're gonna plant something and nothing's gonna grow that year, and then the next year you'll see something up. It's really hard because these plants are used to living out in the wild. And when you take too much care of them, you're babying them so much, or you're putting much more water on them, they don't really like it. You want to try to still give them what they're used to out in the wild. I learned to fall in love with this job and everything that it stands for. Just the fact that we help to restore burnt down areas. The fact that what we do impacts and helps the little creatures out in the wild. You're always learning with native flowers.